Welcome back. This is the 13th session of The Blessed Beauty of Baha'u'llah with Violetta Zain. This was sponsored by the Desert Rose Baha'i Institute in association with Firm Foundation Academy and the Clearwater Baha'is. Thank you all for attending, and let's get started.
Hello, everyone. This is our 13th and last session of narrating the chronology of the life of Baha'u'llah. There is an echo in this house. Mama, can you please close all the doors? I can hear myself. It's
yeah. I'm sorry, Violetta. Let me mute everyone, and then you'll need to unmute yourself.
Okay. All right, wonderful. That's much, much better. Yesterday, we covered the second half of Baha'u'llah's last 16 years in Mazra-e Bahji and his 3 visits to Haifa. And we stopped short of the end of part 9 because I felt like I wanted to keep these 3 or 4 vignettes from Baha'u'llah's last months for us today, so we could spend some time with Baha'u'llah while he was still alive and before his last illness. So we're going to get started with August 1891 to May 1892, vignettes from Baha'u'llah's last 9 months. We began around mid-August 1891 with the revelation of an extraordinary tablet called the Lawh-e Dunya, the tablet of the world. This is a photograph from a professional photographer named Chad Mauger, and you can visit his Flickr page. He has many gorgeous pictures of the holy places in Haifa and Akka, and it's an illustration of the better world promised by Baha'u'llah in the Lawh-e Dunya, the tablet of the world, in which he speaks of the freedom, well-being, tranquility, exaltation, and advancement of all men, a heavenly vista of the mansion of Bahji, where this tablet was revealed. The very first tablet that Baha'u'llah revealed after putting a stop to revelation when he heard the news from the 7 martyrs of Yazd was the Lawh-e Dunya, the tablet of the world, in which he reiterates many of the central teachings of the faith. Some of Baha'u'llah's teachings in this tablet are personal guidance to individuals, such as detachment from the promptings of self, dedicating oneself to the advancement of the entire human race, contributing to the betterment of the world through pure and goodly deeds, through commendable and seemly conduct. The universal well-known aphorism comes from the Lawh-e Dunya, associating with the followers of all religions with not only friendliness but fellowship, and staying away from contention and conflict, and practicing courtesy. In a series of particularly memorable excerpts, Baha'u'llah speaks about the duty of all people to carry forward an ever-advancing civilization, also a well-known saying, by cleaving unto whatsoever will promote the interests and exalt the station of all nations and just governments, and will ensure the freedom, well-being, tranquility, exaltation, and advancement of all men by following essential prerequisites laid down by Baha'u'llah of concord, of understanding, of complete and enduring unity, and following his counsels constituting the supreme animating power for the advancement of the world and the exaltation of its peoples. Baha'u'llah further states, he revealed in the Crimson Book, which is conducive to the advancement of mankind and to the reconstruction of the world, and that all men should dedicate themselves to that which will promote fellowship, kindliness, and unity. Other themes developed by Baha'u'llah in the Lawh-e Dunya are universal and aimed at the rebuilding of society, such as enjoining members of the Universal House of Justice to promote the lesser peace, calling the peoples of the world to embrace one universal faith, to adopt a universal language and script, to contribute and champion the universal education of children, and pay special regard, and to recognize the importance of agriculture. 6th and 7th of August, 1891, Baha'u'llah's last twin holy days. In homage to Baha'u'llah's last twin holy days celebration is another photograph by photographer Chad Mauger in double exposure for the double holidays of the colonnaded balcony on the upper floor of the mansion of Bahji. Shortly after his return from Haifa, Baha'u'llah celebrated the last twin holy days of his ministry. In the Muslim calendar, the Bab's birthday of October 20th and Baha'u'llah's birthday of 12th November fall back to back on sequential days on the 1st and the 2nd of Muharram. And so that is why we know their birthdays as twin holy days, because they are twin holy days in the Muslim calendar. Baha'u'llah revealed a short tablet on the occasion of the birth of the Bab containing a significant passage regarding the twin holy days. O concourse of earth and heaven, this is that first night which God hath made to be a sign of that second night, whereon was born he whom praise, no praise can befittingly extol, and no attribute describe. In 1891, the twin holy days of 1 and 2 Muharram took place on the 6th and the 7th of August, 1891, immediately after Baha'u'llah's return from Haifa. On the 6th of August, 1891, the holy day of the birth of the Bab, Baha'u'llah expounded on the history of division and disunity in religion from Islam to the Babi faith, mainly caused by people selectively interpreting the holy writings. Baha'u'llah distributed pieces of baklava, a Middle Eastern nut-based sweet, to the assembled believers and spoke about the significance of this holy day. This is the day on which Hazrat Mubashir, the Bab, set foot in this world and illumined it with its light. There is every reason for rejoicing. The next day, on the 7th of August, 1891, the 2nd of Muharram, was the festival of the birth of Baha'u'llah, and the Baha'is in Akka were summoned to Baha'u'llah's presence. Baha'u'llah spoke to them about the sublimity of his advent, the power of the most exalted pen, the circumstances of his banishments, and his arrival in the most great prison. And he addressed the fleeting nature of any persecution heaped on the faith by its tyrants, enemies, religious leaders, by quoting 2 lines from the famous poet Hafez. These times more bitter than venom shall pass away, and once again, times as sweet as sugar shall come this way. In the spring of 1892, Baha'u'llah revealed his last message to the Prime Minister of Persia. On the right, the Prime Minister to whom Baha'u'llah speaks, and on the right, those about whom Baha'u'llah speaks, to the Prime Minister, Haji Akund on the left and Haji Amin on the right, 2 hands of the cause appointed by Baha'u'llah during his lifetime in heavy chains below their jailer. In 1891, hands of the cause, Haji Akund and Haji Amin, were imprisoned in Hazvin, the city of Tahrir, where they stayed for 2 years. Ali Asghar Khan, the Shah's prime minister, knew their incarceration was unjust and made kind remarks about the hands of the cause. Not long before his ascension, Baha'u'llah said to Abdul Baha that the following message should be conveyed to Ali Asghar Khan. You took steps to help the prisoners. You freely rendered them a befitting service. This service will not be forgotten. Rest assured that it will bring you honor and call down a blessing upon all your affairs. O Aminu Sultan, every house that is raised up will one day fall to ruin, except the house of God. That will grow more massive and be better guarded day by day. Then serve the court of God with all your might, that you may discover the way to a home in heaven and find an edifice that will endure forever. Ali Asghar Khan received Baha'u'llah's message after his ascension. Part 10. The Blessed Beauty, Part 10. May 29th, 1892, the Ascension of Baha'u'llah. This part covers the months, weeks, and days before, during, and after the Ascension of Baha'u'llah at the age of 75 on May 29th, 1892. The time cometh when the nightingale of holiness will no longer unfold the inner mysteries, and ye will all be bereft of the celestial melody and the voice from on high. 1891 to May 1892, the year prior to the Ascension. 1891, the Kitab-i-Ahd, Book of the Covenant. Just going to wait for this to load, and because it won't make sense otherwise. So the Book of the Covenant is an extraordinary document, and it was revealed in mixed Arabic and Persian. And if you want to hear it in both Arabic and Persian, you can go to the Utterance Project YouTube channel. But there are two verses in which Baha'u'llah designates Abdul-Baha as the center of the covenant, one in Persian and one in Arabic. And it's very fascinating because they essentially are the same statement, but it is almost as if they are directed to the Persian Babis, the family, the Holy Family, and then all Baha'is, you know? So they're in Persian and in Arabic. And these two statements about Abdul-Baha being the center of the covenant in Persian is the will of the divine testator is this: it is incumbent upon the Ahsan, the Afnan, and my kindred to turn one and all their faces towards the most mighty branch. This, the one in Persian, is the one addressed to these native Persian speakers, the descendants of Baha'u'llah, the descendants of of the Bab, and the kindred of Baha'u'llah. And then the verse in Arabic that states the same is: consider that which we have revealed in our most holy book, the Kitab-i-Aqdas, when the ocean of my presence hath ebbed, and the book of my revelation is ended. Turn your faces towards him whom God hath purposed, who hath branched from this ancient root. Approximately a year before his ascension, Baha'u'llah revealed a unique document in the history of religions, his last will and testament, named the Kitab-i-Ahd, Book of My Covenant, also known as Book of the Covenant, and named by him the Crimson Book, in which he clearly designates Abdul-Baha as his successor, the center of the covenant, the authorized interpreter of his teachings, to whom all Baha'is must turn after his ascension. Because of growing danger inside the Holy Family due to Muhammad Ali's increasing unfaithfulness, Baha'u'llah kept his will and testament secret from everyone and safely in his possession. During his last illness, Baha'u'llah gave the Kitab-i-Ahd to Abdul-Baha, who kept it in safekeeping in a box in his home in Akka. And you can listen to an excerpt if you go to the chronology and you click on this graphic, excerpt from the Kitab-i-Ahd. September 1891 to May 1892, Baha'u'llah makes allusions to his passing. In the 9 months, and this is a photograph of Abdul-Baha in the Holy Land, walking alone. In the 9 months before his ascension, Baha'u'llah had already voiced his desire to leave this world. And it became increasingly evident from that moment forward and from the tone of his utterances to those who entered his presence that the close of his earthly life was approaching. Though Baha'u'llah refrained from mentioning it openly to anyone, he began arranging his affairs with a sense of urgency. Around the end of March 1892, Baha'u'llah entrusts the Kitab-i-Ahd to Abdul-Baha. 3 of Abdul-Baha's titles in the Kitab-i-Ahd: the most mighty branch, Ghusn Azam, him whom God hath purposed, man aradullah, who have branched from this ancient root, alladhi inshaba min hadal asil qadim. The first one is in Persian, Ghusn Azam, and the other two are in Arabic. Baha'u'llah revealed the Kitab-i-Ad, written entirely in his own hand. This is important because Mirza Aqa Jan could no longer be trusted. And he told no one about this very precious document, protecting it from the envious and faithless members of his own family, such as his own son, Muhammad Ali, who 2 years prior to Baha'u'llah's ascension had tried and failed to remove all mentions of Abdul Baha in the Kitab-i-Aqdas before it was published in India. Evidence suggests Baha'u'llah had intimated the contents of the Kitab-i-Aqd to Abdul Baha, and 40 days before he was first seized with fevers, sometime around 29 March 1892, Baha'u'llah entrusted his last will and testament to Abdul Baha, who safeguarded it in the house of Abud, locked in a box. Shortly before Baha'u'llah's ascension, I must leave and take my flight. This is a graphic of the open skies above Bahji, where Baha'u'llah expressed his longing to flee away from this physical realm. Sometime in the closing days of his beloved father's life, Abdul Baha was gathering his beloved father's papers, strewn on the divan of his writing chamber in Bahji, when Baha'u'llah turned to him and said, "It is of no use to gather them. I must leave them and flee away." May 8 to May 17th, 1892, 9 days of illness. On Sunday, May 8th, 1892, Baha'u'llah contracts a fever. The day Baha'u'llah suffered his first fever, 1,000 Palestinians from the countryside of Bahji were forcibly conscripted and held not far from the mansion of Bahji. This is a Palestinian Army Corps illustration. On Sunday, May 8th, 1892, the Ottoman government rounded up 1,000 farmers, gave them military uniforms, and held them against their will as conscripts to be sent for training in far-off lands in a few days' time. The tents where the involuntary conscripts were held were close to the grounds of the mansion of Bahji, and their heartbreaking cries and the lamentation of their families could be heard day and night. The evening of that same day, 50 days after Nowruz, Baha'u'llah contracted a fever, but did not mention it to anyone. Monday, May 9th, 1892, the fever intensifies. The main hall of Bahji in 1921, before Shohi Effendi began renovations on the mansion, and perhaps a hall through which Baha'u'llah's only visitor on Monday, May 9th, passed through on his way to his presence. On the following morning of May 9th, Monday, a number of friends attained the presence of Baha'u'llah, and by late afternoon, his fever had intensified. That evening, Baha'u'llah only admitted one believer to his presence who had an urgent demand. Tuesday, May 10th, 1892, Nabil's last audience with Baha'u'llah. At noon on Tuesday, May 10th, Baha'u'llah summoned Nabil Azam, author of the Dawnbreakers, poet laureate of the Blessed Beauty, and apostle of Baha'u'llah, to his presence and spoke to him for half an hour, at times seated and at times pacing his room, vouchsafing on his loyal and devoted follower infinite bounties. In the afternoon, Haji Niyaz, a well-known believer, arrived from Egypt and entered the presence of Baha'u'llah with several friends. Baha'u'llah continued to accept visitors until sunset. Wednesday, May 11th, 1892, the door of union is closed. This is the door of the mansion of Bahji. The following day, Wednesday, May 11th, 1892, 3 days after his first fever, Baha'u'lláh did not allow anyone to enter his presence, and an atmosphere of gloom descended on the believers, deprived of the presence of their beloved. Monday, May 16th, 1892, a message from Baha'u'lláh. This is the Pilgrim House at Bahji in 1926. For several days, Baha'u'lláh continued to claw the door of his presence until Monday, May 16th, 1892, when Abdul-Baha left Baha'u'llah's presence and delivered a message to the believers. All the friends must remain patient and steadfast and arise for the promotion of the cause of God. They should not become perturbed, because I shall always be with them and will remember and care for them. Baha'u'llah's last words broke the believers' hearts. They cried out, grieving from the tone of Abdul-Baha's remarks, clearly indicating the end of Baha'u'llah's life was at hand, and the realization threw the believers in an extreme state of turmoil and dismay. From May 17th to May 29th, 1892, the last 12 days of Baha'u'lláh. Tuesday, May 17th, 1892, the day of joy. Baha'u'llah's condition improves. This is a view of Akka, because Akka is where Abdul-Baha is going to go and visit the homes of each one of the Baha'is with the joyful news. A day of sorrow gave way to a day of joy. The next day, Tuesday, May 17th, 1892, Abdul-Baha arrived at the Pilgrim House at Bahji at dawn and gave everyone the happy news that Baha'u'llah's condition had greatly improved. Abdul-Baha awoke the friends one by one, bade them rise, drink their morning tea with the utmost joy, and offer thanksgiving to God for Baha'u'llah's good health. The news turned the day into a festival of happiness, and believers and the people of Akka all congratulated each other. Later that same morning, Sultan Abdul Hamid sent a telegram from Istanbul, ordering the release of the 1,000 involuntary conscripts, and everyone, and now I mean everyone, the Baha'is and all the Palestinians from the area were filled with joy. Abdul-Baha distributed food among the conscripts, the poor, the orphans, and the prisoners of Akka. None of the inhabitants of Akka could ever remember a happier day, and they offered gratitude to Baha'u'lláh for his bounty. Abdul-Baha also visited the home of every Baha'i in Akka and conveyed to everyone, man and woman, the loving greetings of Baha'u'lláh. Between May 8th and May 29th, Baha'u'lláh orders Abdul-Baha to gather his papers. Some relics of Baha'u'lláh to illustrate a story relating to his belongings, later stolen by the covenant breakers. Abdul-Baha stayed with Baha'u'lláh night and day during his illness, in a state of deep sorrow. One day, as he lay in bed, Baha'u'lláh instructed Abdul-Baha to gather all his papers and place them in 2 cases. The finality of what Baha'u'lláh had just asked his eldest son to do shook Abdul-Baha to his core, and he hesitated to comply, but Baha'u'lláh insisted. As he was gathering Baha'u'llah's papers with trembling hands and tearful eyes, Abdul-Baha saw Mirza Majuddin, the future covenant breaker, son of Mirza Musa, and asked for Mirza Majuddin's help to help finish the heartbreaking task. When Baha'u'llah's papers, seals, and other items were locked into the 2 cases, Baha'u'lláh said to Abdul-Baha, "These 2 now belong to you." Baha'u'llah's words implied his approaching ascension and pierced Abdul-Baha's heart like an arrow. Estimated Tuesday, 17th of May, 1892, come to me and bring Hanum. 5 days before the Holy Family bid farewell to Baha'u'llah in the mansion of Bahji, Baha'u'llah sent a servant from Bahji to the house of Abud and Akka with a worrisome message for Abdul Baha. I am not well. Come to me and bring Khanum. Abdul Baha and Bahiye Khanum left for Bahji immediately, while Munir Khanum stayed at home with the children, filled with anxiety. Sunday, May 22nd, 1892, Baha'u'llah's last audience with the believers. On Sunday, May 22nd, 1892, all the believers present at the mansion of Bahji, pilgrims and residents alike, were summoned to Baha'u'llah's presence. The entire body of believers, weeping and grief-stricken, attained his presence as Baha'u'llah lay in bed, leaning against one of his sons. Baha'u'llah gently and affectionately addressed them, saying, I am well pleased with you all. You have rendered many services and been very assiduous in your labors. You have come here every morning and every evening. May God assist you to remain united. May he aid you to exalt the cause of the Lord of Being. Jinabi Mirza Ismail could not stop weeping, and Baha'u'llah beckoned him forward, wiping his tears from his cheeks using his own handkerchief. Later that same day, Baha'u'llah bids his final farewell to the women of the Holy Family on Sunday, the 22nd of May, 1892. And here are the two holiest members of the women of the Holy Family. Bahiye Khanum, Baha'u'llah's daughter, on the left, and Munir Khanum, Abdul Baha's wife, on the right. That same day, Baha'u'llah addressed himself to the women of the Holy Family gathered around his bedside, offering them words of comfort and assuring them that he had entrusted them to the care of Abdul Baha in a special document. A few days before May 29th, 1892, the betrayal of Mirza Aqa Jan. This is a photograph of Mirza Aqa Jan, the amanuensis of Baha'u'llah, for 40 years. Mirza Aqa Jan had been Baha'u'llah's amanuensis for 40 years, the entirety of Baha'u'llah's ministry, save for the few months before they met in Baghdad in 1853, serving Baha'u'llah with great zeal and enthusiasm, but not that much humility. His arrogance increased with time, like a growing tree. And towards the end of Baha'u'llah's life, his shortcomings had caused Baha'u'llah a lot of sadness. A man who had witnessed Baha'u'llah's most stupendous revelation for 4 decades fell from grace in the most shameful way. Abdul Baha rebuked him for his conduct several times. Sometime before Baha'u'llah's ascension, not long, Haji Mirza Abdullah, the father-in-law of the martyred Varagha, asked Baha'u'llah about the tablets he had revealed in Mirza Aqa Jan's voice. This was something Baha'u'llah would do. He would reveal tablets as if it was Mirza Aqa Jan speaking. So Baha'u'llah directed Haji Mirza Abdullah, the father of Varagha, to get the answer directly from Mirza Aqa Jan. When Mirza Aqa Jan hesitated to answer, in the sense of kind of wanted to say it was his voice, he just wouldn't flat out say it's all Baha'u'llah. And that was the problem. He wouldn't flat out say it's all Baha'u'llah's revelation. And so some of the believers rose up against him. Soon after this, Mirza Aqa Jan spoke arrogantly to Baha'u'llah, causing grave displeasure. Abdul Baha found believers arguing with each other, one group led by Nabil and the other one led by Fourier, one of Baha'u'llah's daughters who later became a covenant breaker. Abdul Baha put an end to their argument and rebuked them both for creating an unnecessary division at such a critical time. Abdul Baha then confronted Mirza Aqa Jan and reprimanded him for his offensive behavior, later entering Baha'u'llah's presence 3 separate times to intercede for Mirza Aqa Jan's forgiveness. The son of Baha has set. The Ascension of Baha'u'llah, May 29th, 1892, at 3 o'clock in the morning. This is the very room in which Baha'u'llah's ascension took place. 8 hours after sunset in the early morning of Saturday, May 29th, 1892, Baha'u'llah passed away at the age of 75 at 3 o'clock in the morning in his bedchamber in the mansion of Bahji, with no sign of the fever that had ebbed and flowed for nearly 3 weeks. His spirit hath winged its way to other dominions where the eyes of the people of names have never fallen. A horseman was called immediately and dispatched to Akka to carry the news to the Mufti, and the 7 minarets of the Mosque of Al-Jazar called out the customary proclamation only issued in the event of the death of a greatly honored, highly learned and holy man. God is great, he giveth life, he taketh it again, he dieth not, but liveth forevermore. Unlike the tragedy of the Babi community after the martyrdom of the Bab, the Baha'i community would never suffer 1 second of confusion and lack of leadership. The cloud of hopelessness and despair that briefly settled over the community of believers was soon lifted. Baha'u'llah had ensured the continuity of his infallible guidance, conferred upon Abdul Baha, and the community recognized in him its guide, its solace, its champion. The ascension of Baha'u'llah had ushered in the day which shall not be followed by night. May 29th, 1892, later that same morning of Baha'u'llah's ascension, the cable to the Sultan, the son of Baha, has set. Abdul Baha immediately sent a telegram to Sultan Abdul Hamid, which began with the words, "The son of Baha has set," in which he informed the Sultan of his intention to inter the sacred remains of Baha'u'llah within the precincts of the mansion of Bahji, an arrangement to which the Sultan readily assented. A few hours after Baha'u'llah's ascension at dawn on May 29th, 1892, the betrayal of Mirza Muhammad Ali. Despite some deeply unfaithful acts starting in Adrianople and continuing in Akka, Mirza Muhammad Ali had mostly played the part of being a loyal son to Baha'u'llah and a loyal brother to Abdul Baha, but he showed his true self and his despicable plans to overthrow Abdul Baha as the center of the covenant before the blessed remains of Baha'u'llah were even laid to rest. Baha'u'llah had a long-standing practice of placing all his papers and seals in 2 large cases, which he had, a few days prior, entrusted to Abdul Baha, who asked for Mirza Majiddin's help. As Abdul Baha was getting ready to wash Baha'u'llah's holy body and prepare it for burial, Muhammad removing the 2 cases from the room because they could get wet. Abdul Baha was in such a state of grief and shock that he was barely conscious of his surroundings and could never have imagined that his treacherous half-brother was planning to steal them in the same room as the sacred remains of Baha'u'llah were laid. Abdul Baha agreed to Muhammad Ali's suggestion, who took Baha'u'llah's 2 precious cases out of the room. It was the last time Abdul Baha ever saw them. Among important papers and tablets and several of Baha'u'llah's carved seals, the 2 cases also contained the text containing Baha'u'llah's corrections to Nabil's narrative, which the Guardian recast as the Dawnbreakers. Nothing was ever recovered. In a heartbreaking tablet to the Baha'i of Shiraz, Abdul Baha spoke of this first great betrayal by covenant breakers. The center of violation, Muhammad Ali, purloined in its entirety the divine trust which specifically appertained to this servant. He took everything and returned nothing. To this day, the usurper unjustly remains in possession. Although each single item is more precious for Abdul Baha than the dominion of earth and heaven, till now I have kept silent and have not breathed a word, lest it bring us into disrepute amongst strangers. This was a severe blow to me. I suffered, I sorrowed, I wept, but I spoke not. A few days later, a believer asked Abdul Baha if he could have one of Baha'u'llah's seals affixed to a tablet he had revealed for him. When Abdul Baha asked Mirza Muhammad Ali to bring the seals, he claimed he didn't know where they were and that he had never received them. 29th of May, 1892, Baha'u'llah is laid to rest. This is also a beautiful photograph by Chad Mauger. Really encourage you to visit his website. He's a wonderful photographer. Baha'u'llah was laid to rest in the northernmost room of the house, which served as a dwelling place for his son-in-law, the most northerly of the three houses lying to the west of and adjacent to the mansion of Bahji. Baha'u'llah's interment took place shortly after sunset on the very day of his ascension. May 29th to June 7th, 1892, the 9 days after the ascension. Abdul Baha asks Nabil to compile the tablet of visitation for Baha'u'llah. This is an infographic explaining the 4 different sources from which paragraphs and parts of paragraphs and individual sentences are taken to create the tablet of visitation. The first 4 paragraphs of the tablet of visitation come from a tablet of Baha'u'llah revealed to a man named Agha Baba. Paragraphs 5 and 6 come from a tablet to an unknown recipient. The first 3 sentences of the 7th paragraph also come from a tablet to an unknown recipient. And then the last 3 sentences of the tablet of visitation's 7th paragraph and last paragraph come from a tablet written to a woman named Nargiz Khatun. Nabil was inconsolable after Baha'u'llah's ascension. He was absolutely through and through consumed by grief and heartbreak. He paid a last tribute to Baha'u'llah in the form of supplication, which includes this stirring paragraph. From the moment thou didst mount thy throne at the hour of dawn on the 2nd of Muharram, 12th of November, 1817, until thy ascension into the realms of eternity 8 hours after sunset on the 2nd of Dhil Khali, 1309, 29 May, 1892, thou wert at all times, at day and at night, each month and each year, the cause of the exaltation of mankind. Baha'u'llah asked Nabil in the midst of this unbearable sorrow to compile the tablet of visitation for Baha'u'llah, using tablets he had revealed during his lifetime. Nabil excerpted 4 paragraphs from 4 individual tablets in Arabic, which compose the tablet of visitation for Baha'u'llah and the Bab that we recite on holy days and on pilgrimage to their shrines. To listen to the entire tablet of visitation recited in Arabic with English subtitles and transliteration, please visit the Utterance Project YouTube channel. May 29th to June 7th, 1892, Sheikh Mahmud watches over the shrine of Baha'u'llah. Sheikh Mahmud was originally Baha'u'llah's bitter foe. If you remember when we were looking at part 7 of The Most Great Prison, and there was a man who wanted to kill Baha'u'llah and came with a dagger. And Baha'u'llah said, come back when your heart is pure. And he came back and wanted to kill him with his bare hands. He sent him away 3 times until he finally just became a believer, because his grandfather had had this vision of a Persian prisoner at the top of a high staircase. And he became one of the very first Ottoman Palestinian believers in Akka at the time of Baha'u'llah. And he remained a very, very, very faithful Baha'i, always helped all the pilgrims coming in, and all the people who tried to see Baha'u'llah and couldn't were turned away. He was really a wonderful, wonderful man, and his name was Sheikh Mahmud. So he had become one of Baha'u'llah's earliest followers in Akka, like I just said. and also one of his most devoted. After the ascension, Sheikh Mahmud set up a tent just outside his resting place and kept watch for an entire week while construction work to strengthen the outer wall of Baha'u'llah's shrine was completed. During the same time as Sheikh Mahmud, who incidentally was also one of the people who washed the body of Mirza Mehdi, he begged that honor from Baha'u'llah. During that same time was also a week of mourning for the people of Akka, because the people of Akka had come to consider their improved circumstances entirely due, and justly so, to Baha'u'llah. Baha'u'llah was the one who brought fresh water to Akka for the first time in 30 years. And when he had recovered from his fever in the middle of his illness was also the day when all the people were set free. And people always ascribe these miracles to Baha'u'llah, and in a sense they were. And so when he passed away, the people of Akka mourned him just as strongly as Baha'is. These are pilgrims at Bahji in 1914 under the pines, where the hundreds of mourners congregated for a week of mourning from May 29th to early June 1892, honoring and praising Baha'u'llah and lamenting his loss. Baha'u'llah's ascension had a devastating effect on the Baha'i community and on the community at large. For a full week after his passing, 500 mourners poured through the gates of the mansion of Bahji. Sunni and Shia Muslims, Christians, Jews and Druze, Ottoman officials, merchants, leading figures and priests, learned men and poets, rich and poor, the orphan and the dispossessed, everyone partook with heavy hearts of the food for the bereaved and heartbroken that the Holy Family prepared for them without cease during these 7 days. They came in great numbers to pay their final respects to Baha'u'llah and mourned him like a king. Yet at the time of his death, Baha'u'llah was still a prisoner of the Ottoman Empire. The plain stretching from the mansion of Bahji teemed with crowds who came to grieve with each other, lamenting their immense loss of the man who, by the power vested in him by God, had made their lives better, given them clean water and better air for the first time in 3 decades. Their farewell to Baha'u'llah was not even on the same plane of comparison as their hateful, jeering welcome 24 years ago, when they had come to insult the God of the Persians. A quarter of a century later, they were mourning the very best of their own. The news of Baha'u'llah's passing had been announced with all the pomp and circumstance reserved for very great men, and was proclaimed from the minarets of every mosque throughout the entire region. People responded to the call and converged from the surrounding villages to Bahji to pay their respects. According to Arab customs, many sheikhs brought lamb, rice, sugar, and salt for the poor in return for their prayers for the soul of the departed. The majority of the 500 mourners camped beneath the pines at Bahji, where Abdul Baha had held his test banquet 15 years ago to see if Baha'u'llah would be let out of the land gate to Akka, from Akka to Mazray. While they remained in mourning for 7 days, the call to prayer rose them at dawn, and Baha'u'llah's beautiful prayers were chanted from the mansion's upper floor balcony. Poets sang martier, songs in praise of the departed. Sheikhs chanted prayers and lamentations and gave funeral orations, praising Baha'u'llah's long life of sacrifice for the good of others. Abdul Baha and the Holy Family were constantly in attendance, making sure their guests had enough food, day or night, and Abdul Baha oversaw the details of the week-long hospitality himself, donating money to the poor on each of the 9 official days of mourning. The spiritual commotion which caused all the worlds of God to tremble. A devastated Nabil, steadfast to his calling as a historian, left us with a vivid description of the agony of the days following the ascension of Baha'u'llah. Methinks the spiritual commotion set up in the world of dust has caused all the worlds of God to tremble. My inner and outer tongue are powerless to portray the condition we were in. In the midst of the prevailing confusion, a multitude of the inhabitants of Akka and of the neighboring villages that have thronged the fields surrounding the mansion could be seen weeping, beating upon their heads and crying aloud in their grief. Beginning 2 days after Baha'u'llah's ascension on the 31st of May, 1892, glowing tributes to Baha'u'llah. This is another work by Chad Mauger, my favorite photographer. Tributes to Baha'u'llah's greatness and majesty poured from cities as far away as Damascus, Aleppo, Beirut, and Cairo in Arabic and Turkish. The Ascension of Baha'u'llah evoked many effusive manifestations of sorrow and touching expressions of praise and admiration in the hearts of the friends of the faith, but they paled in comparison to the ocean of grief, the unbounded devotion that poured out from the hearts of countless thousands of Baha'is in Persia, India, Russia, Iraq, Turkey, Palestine, Egypt, and Syria. All the glowing tributes to Baha'u'llah were given to Abdul Baha, now the heart and soul and the center of the cause, and whose praises were intermingled with these messages with praises of Baha'u'llah. From the second day after Baha'u'llah's passing, men of learning and poets, Muslims and Christians had started sending Abdul Baha telegrams and expressions of sincere condolences and poems extolling Baha'u'llah's virtues and lamenting his ascension. On the 2nd of June, 1892, Baha'u'llah's cases are violated. And to illustrate a story that broke Abdul Baha's heart, we purposefully chose an older black and white photograph of the Western Gallery of the Mansion of Bahchi, where part of the story below takes place in a state of disrepair, as an expression for the sadness that encompassed Abdul Baha, as he witnessed the violation of Baha'u'llah's precious cases. For 3 days and nights since Baha'u'llah's interment, Abdul Baha had been heartbroken and disconsolate. He wept for hours in a state of unbearable grief, and neither slept nor rested for a single moment. The light of his world had gone out, and he was finding his way in darkness. The 4th night after the ascension, around midnight, Abdul Baha rose from his bed and walked a few steps to the window, seeking a measure of peace and tranquility. But what he witnessed was a desecration, shocking beyond belief. In his epistle of repentance, Muhammad Ali's brother Mirza Bahá'u'lláh revealed the extent of Muhammad Ali's treachery, which led to the scene Abdul Baha had just witnessed. 3 days after the ascension, his brother asked him for the keys so he could open the cases, saying, Baha'u'llah has placed a certain document in these cases which needs to be studied. Muhammad Ali was no doubt searching for Baha'u'llah's last will and testament. Muhammad Ali, with help from his wife, help from Majiddin, help from Ali Reza and his sister, hoisted the cases out of the window onto the balcony of the mansion and into Mirza Muhammad Ali's room. Claiming that Baha'u'llah had invested him in a tablet with a responsibility to protect his holy writings, Muhammad Ali removed all the tablets revealed in honor of individual Baha'is. In his mad ravings that early morning, Muhammad Ali suggested that Abdul Baha was against the cause of Baha'u'llah and that he would use these very tablets to obliterate every trace of Baha'u'llah from this world. Abdul Baha was deeply disturbed by the scene of his half-brothers violating Baha'u'llah's cases and searching through the papers Baha'u'llah had so clearly entrusted to him. The cruel treachery on the very day of Baha'u'llah's ascension inflicted further pain and suffering on his sorrow-laden heart. Abdul Baha returned to his bed immediately after this incident. He did not want Muhammad Ali and Mirza Bahá'u'lláh to know that he had seen them. And he surmised that since they had not found Baha'u'llah's will and testament, they were looking for another document that would help them in their designs to hurt the cause and create dissension and division within the ranks of the believers. It was Abdul Baha's sincere hope that they would return these cases, his sacred trust to him, after seeing the Kitabi'at, in which Baha'u'llah specifically denies his sons any right to the property of others. 7th of June, 1892, the Kitabi'at, Book of the Covenant. On the 7th of June, 1892, the unsealing and reading of the Kitabi'at. Sometime after the ascension of Baha'u'llah, Abdul Baha had sent to Akka for the box containing Baha'u'llah's will and testament, the Kitabi'at. And on the 9th day following the ascension, marking the end of the mourning period, Agha Reza Ekanan read the Kitabi'at for the first time to 9 witnesses chosen from among Baha'u'llah's family and followers, including Mirza Muhammad Ali. On the afternoon of the same day, Mirza Majiddin read the Kitab-i-Ahd a second time inside the shrine of Baha'u'llah before a large assembly of pilgrim and resident Baha'is, males descendants of the Bab, Afnans, and male descendants of Baha'u'llah, Akhsans. The 7th of June, 1892, the deeply ambitious Mirza Muhammad Ali, his scheming brother Mirza Badi'ullah, and his envious nephew Mirza Majiddin, one of the readers of the Kitab-i-Ahd, had twice listened to Baha'u'llah's last will and testament, beginning with the momentous words, "The will of the divine testator is this. It is incumbent upon the Ahsan," which was all of them, all three of them, they were Ahsan, "the Afnan and my kindred, to turn one and all their faces towards the most mighty branch, Abdul-Baha. Consider that which we have revealed in our most holy book. When the ocean of my presence hath ebbed, and the book of my revelation is ended, turn your faces towards him whom God hath purposed, who hath branched from this ancient root." All three would later break the covenant, while Mirza Muhammad Ali would become the archbreaker of the covenant of Baha'u'llah, thus titled by Shohi Effendi. The Kitab-i-Ahd, a spiritual test of faithfulness. Faithful Baha'is versus covenant breakers. This is the same image processed to show the forces of evil at work against the forces of good. Abdul-Baha stated that the foundations of covenant, the 7th of June, 1892. After the reading of Baha'u'llah's last will and testament, the faithful believers rejoiced with great happiness, while the unfaithful wallowed in deep sorrow. The faces of the steadfast Baha'is were wreathed with the light of joy, and those of the covenant breakers were darkened by the dust of gloom. Covenant breaking, born of jealousy of the center of the covenant, began to grow like a cancer, though not immediately after the ascension. As soon as the Kitab-i-Ahd was made public to all Baha'is, it had the effect of an exam on students, dividing them between those who passed the test of faithfulness and those who failed and were cast out of the community as covenant breakers. The Kitab-i-Ahd, the covenant of Baha'u'llah. This is a visual history of the covenant, starting with the Bab, passed on to Baha'u'llah, and they are represented by their shrines. So the shrine of Abdul-Baha representing the passage of the covenant from Baha'u'llah to Abdul-Baha, then to Shohi Effendi, and then to the Universal House of Justice. The Kitab-i-Ahd embodies the covenant as it passes down authority from the manifestation of God to the center of the covenant. And Abdul-Baha has described this covenant as so firm and mighty that from the beginning of time until the present day, no religious dispensation have produced its like. Abdul-Baha explained that the pivot or the central point of the oneness of mankind is the center of the covenant, that the sure handle mentioned in ancient religious scripture is the covenant and testament, that the covenant is the light of the world, that the Baha'i dispensation was blessed with a new covenant and a new testament set down by the pen of the Most High without parallel in religious history. The power of the covenant, says Abdul-Baha, is as the heat of the sun, which quickeneth and promoteth the development of all created things on earth. The light of the covenant, in like manner, is the educator of minds, the spirits, the hearts, and souls of men. Abdul-Baha used so many eloquent terms to refer to the covenant, calling it the conclusive testimony, the universal balance, the magnet of God's grace, the upraised standard, the irrefutable testament, the almighty covenant, the like of which the sacred dispensations of the past have never witnessed, and one of the distinctive features of this most mighty cycle. Muhammad Ali denies stealing the cases. Soon after that historic day when the Kitabi Ahd was first read, one of the Afnans asked to use one of Baha'u'llah's blessed seals. I think we've said this story before. But anyway, Mirza Muhammad Ali, again, I think he must have lied twice. He lied again about not having the seals. And when Abdul Baha was deeply perplexed by this blatant denial, and he was plunged into further sorrow and grief, his whole body was taken with trembling, and he knew then and there that great, great tests would lie ahead because of these covenant breakers. So these are a few vignettes about the ascension of Baha'u'llah in time, over time, and starting in June and July 1892, and then 1893, and then 1895 and 1896, just a few stories. 29th of June, 1892, Mirza Aqa Jan's confession, finally. Baha'u'llah's ascension took place shortly after Mirza Aqa Jan's failure to give Baha'u'llah immediate and full credit for all the emanations of his pen, even those that Baha'u'llah chose to reveal in Mirza Aqa Jan's voice. After the ascension, Abdul Baha revisited the matter and asked Mirza Aqa Jan to send Haji Mirza Abdullah the reply he had been waiting for all these months. Mirza Aqa Jan wrote a letter in his own hand, dated 1 month after Baha'u'llah's ascension, in which he unequivocally stated that every single word of every single tablet of Baha'u'llah had been dictated to him by Baha'u'llah himself. Not one word has originated from this servant. Every word was revealed from the kingdom of God, my Lord, yours, and the Lord of all who are in heaven and on earth. Always after obtaining permission, I would, in his most holy and exalted presence, read the letters which were addressed to this servant. He would then direct me to take my pen and write the answer, which from beginning to end was revealed by his blessed tongue. This practice was not limited to this servant alone. Many times has the tongue of grandeur revealed in the words of his companions or other believers who came from abroad what amounts to a mighty book for all the world. I was only a servant recording his words in his presence. Lest you feel too good about Mirza Aqa Jan after reading his confession, he completely loses it after this. And by 1896, he was just irretrievably nuts and really, really active with the covenant breakers. And he died in 1901. Yeah, 1901. After July 26th of, so actually, this is really interesting. I actually found the exact date for Nabil's passing today in a book by Mujan Momin. So it definitely is after July. It's in September. I think the 3rd of September, 1892. Nabil's insurmountable grief. This is a beautiful view of the sea in Akka, because that is the place where Nabil died. Nabil was utterly, completely inconsolable after the ascension of Baha'u'llah, whom he had served for many decades, 4 decades. To add to his insurmountable grief, Abdul Baha's half-brothers began their covenant-breaking activities immediately after the ascension, and Nabil couldn't bear the world he was living in and the agony he felt constantly. He took his own life by drowning himself in the Mediterranean almost 2 months after. 4 months. His suicide note was a single Arabic word, gharik, which means drowned, the numerical value of which corresponds to both the year Baha'u'llah had passed away and his own passing. A year after Nabil's death, on the 23rd of September, 1893, the name of Baha'u'llah was publicly spoken in the West for the very first time. This is a photograph of the world's first religious parliament in Chicago in 1893, where Baha'u'llah's name was mentioned. The Reverend H. Jessup, director of Presbyterian missionary operations in North Syria, read a paper at the World Parliament of Religions held in Chicago between the 11th and the 27th of September, making it the first organized interfaith gathering. The organizers made an attempt to include everyone from a variety of Christian denominations, Jewish and Muslim representations, new faith movements like spiritualists, First Nations figures, Sikhs, the Theosophical Society, indigenous Chinese religions, Jains, Buddhists, Zen practitioners, and Brahmo Saraj. On the 23rd of September, 1893, 6 days into the conference, the Reverend Jessup announced that a famous Persian sage, the Babi saint, had recently died in Akka, closing his address by stating he felt moved to read Edward Granville Brown's account of his visit to Baha'u'llah a year before his ascension. Jessup shared the excerpt, he said, because of the sentiments so noble, so Christ-like, expressed by Baha'u'llah in the interview. That same year in Russia was the very first Western publication of the Baha'u'llah's Kitab-i-Ahd, and actually the first publication of the Kitab-i-Ahd, but also just extraordinary. So this is the cover page of a journal and like a page from the Kitab-i-Ahd. Of course, Arabic is there. And then this is the poet Andalib. And on the left and on the right, it is the Russian Orientalist Baron Viktor Romanovich von Rosen who published it. But the person at the source, the idea of publishing the Kitab-i-Ahd was Alexander Grigorievich Tumansky, who is a Russian Orientalist and a major general of the Russian Imperial Army from an ancient aristocratic family. The man was fluent in 11 languages, including Turkish, Persian, and Arabic. He had formed very strong bonds of friendship with Baha'is of Ashgabat. He had met Mirza Abul Fazl, and he had remained close to the Baha'i community until the end of his life. When the devastating news of Baha'u'llah's ascension reached the Baha'is of Ashgabat on the 24th of June, 1892, Tumansky, as a friend of the faith, was invited to the memorial gathering in honor of Baha'u'llah held on the property of the House of Worship in Ashgabat, Turkmenistan. It was in the unfinished building in front of which was a very large, very pretty pool of water and a newly built garden. The believers said prayers, read the Kitab-i-Ahd aloud, and recited the Martier, it's a poem on loss that extols the qualities of the deceased. It's a form of a Persian poem written by Andalib. It was 31 couplets, and Andalib was present during the ascension. So it was basically a poem, but also an eyewitness account in the form of a poem of lamentation. And Martier is kind of a lamentation. So it was just a very, very touching, very beautiful. And I think so shortly after the memorial gathering on the 3rd of July, 1892, Tumansky wrote a letter to the Russian Orientalist you see here, Baron von Rosen, and said, this is something here, here's the Kitab-i-Ahd, this is the will and testament of Baha'u'llah, who's the founder of the Baha'i faith, and here is a 31 couplet poem by Andalib, which is really beautiful. And this was an Orientalist paper. So both things were Oriental. So they fit perfectly, and they agreed to publish them. So about 1 year after the ascension of Baha'u'llah, his will and testament, the Kitab-i-Ahd, to which Baha'u'llah had referred to as his most great tablet, was published in a Russian academic journal. And there it is right here. This is a beautiful paper that was written by Christopher Buck and Yuli Yonesian. So you can read the whole story. If you go to the chronology, you click on the link, you can find that beautiful paper there. So in 1895, 1896, 3 years after the passing of Baha'u'llah, the Yaqub ibn Betros had words about the shrine of Baha'u'llah. This is a general view of Beirut, Lebanon. So in 1895, 1896, when Mirza Abul Fazl was living in Syria, which is also Lebanon. They would call that whole area Syria at the time. Yaqub ibn Betros was a Lebanese doctor of divinity and linguistics, and he was well known among the Christian community of Akka. He composed a poem in praise of the shrine of Baha'u'llah in Bahji and offered it to Abdul Baha. Set betwixt the twin mounts of Lebanon and Carmel is the Bahji. Therein is the resting place of Baha, the Lord of bounty and mercy, the chosen master, the lamp of guidance, Baha, the splendor and the light of the sun of the truth. He who is the luminary of all names, therein the true joy, the desire of all hearts, hearts that seek his lights, the solace of the eyes, the fulfillment and realization of all hope. By his beneficent presence, the water that springs from the well of those parts was purified, and the air and clime of Akka and its environs were changed. And I have two more things to share with you today. One is an overview of the ministry of Baha'u'llah from 1852 to 1892. 1852 being when Baha'u'llah received the revelation in the Siyat-Shal. This is a magnificent frontispiece of the Ma'muji Mubaraki, the Blessed Collection, a gathering of 26 of Baha'u'llah's most important works in an exceptionally decorated volume bound in exquisite traditional lacquer binding. The calligrapher was Mirza Ali Akbar Milani Muhib al-Sultan, who was the manager of the Royal Printing Press in Tehran. So this is a blended account of Baha'u'llah's ministry, and it was composed from 8 separate paragraphs in various chapters of God Passes By. When the Bab declared his mission to Mullah Hussein on May 23rd, 1844, and so these are the words of Shoghi Effendi, of course. No, these are my words, but they are based on 8 separate excerpts of God Passes By that I've brought together. So I'm not quoting Shoghi Effendi right now. When the Bab declared his mission to Mullah Hussein on the 23rd of May, 1844, dynamic process with the power to transform the world. That process was accelerated with Baha'u'llah's revelation in the Siyat-Shal in October of 1852 and reached a climax with his declaration in the Garden of Rizwan in Baghdad before its full significance was unveiled to the world through Baha'u'llah's proclamation, which started in Adrianople in Kitabi Aqdas in 1873 through the Most Great Persian with the 5 tablets to 4 tablets. Haikal. So the proclamation of Baha'u'llah essentially was consummated through the formulation of his laws, principles, and institutions enshrined in the most holy book, several of which Baha'u'llah instituted in his own lifetime. The institution of the covenant was the divinely ordained instrument, organically linked with Baha'u'llah, which was to direct and canalize the monumental forces let loose by this world-embracing, dynamic process that was ushered into the world with the birth of the Baha'i dispensation. Baha'u'llah safeguarded this mighty covenant before his passing by firmly and unequivocally establishing Abdul Baha as his successor in the Kitabi Ahd. At the time of Baha'u'llah's ascension, nearly half a century had passed since the birth of the Babi revelation, and exactly 40 years had elapsed since the birth of the Baha'i revelation. When the Babi community had been reduced to dust after the cruel and sudden martyrdom of the Bab, Baha'u'llah was the one who'd raised it from his ashes, guided the Babis to the Baha'i revelation, and rehabilitated the fortunes of a broken community until it had thrived and prospered under his guiding hand and the revivifying outpour of his uninterrupted revelation. Baha'u'llah's revelation is unparalleled in the annals of religious history, both for the magnitude of his writings and the diversity of subjects that he expounds upon. Baha'u'llah testified to the volume of his revelation, saying, "The verses which have rained from this cloud of divine mercy have been so abundant that none hath yet been able to estimate their number." In terms of the variety of themes one can find in Baha'u'llah's holy writings, they include prayers, homilies, orations, tablets of visitation, scientific treatises, doctrinal dissertations, exhortations, commentaries on the Quran, hadith, and the hadiths, epistles to kings and religious leaders, laws and ordinances. With the ascension of Baha'u'llah, the second epoch of the heroic age of the faith drew to a close, and the message proclaimed by the Bab had yielded its precious fruit. The sun of truth had risen from the dark depths of the Siat-Chal, had broken through the clouds of Baghdad, climbed to its zenith in Adrianople, and finally set in Akka, never to rise until the lapse of a full millennium. Divine revelation was ended. All of the kings, ministers, princes, and religious leaders who either directly opposed the faith of Baha'u'llah, failed to respond to his call, failed to inquire into his message, failed to avert his sufferings, or failed to heed the marvelous prophecies of his advent, felt the full force of God's retributive justice. Baha'u'llah had prophecies: from two ranks among men power hath been seized, kings and ecclesiastics. Speaking about the tyrannical kings of the earth, Baha'u'llah stated, in this revelation hath God visited each and every tyrant with his vengeance. And regarding the world's religious leaders, Baha'u'llah had these stern words: the source and origin of tyranny have been the divines. The newborn Baha'i revelation had fulfilled the prophecies regarding its advent. Its fundamental laws, those which would form the warp and woof of the fabric of the new world order, had been clearly enunciated, and its embryonic institutions established. Its covenant had been safeguarded for posterity, and Baha'u'llah had promised world peace and the unification of the human race, and entered into the third epoch of the heroic age, firmly guided and encouraged by Abdul-Baha, center of the covenant. And the story continues with the chronology, the extraordinary life of Abdul-Baha, which we will be sharing with each other starting on the 22nd of September. And I wanted to share something else with you. I'm going to stop sharing from this screen, and I'm going to share from this screen. Oh, so sorry. May I be co-host, please, on where my face is? Oh, thank you so much. Thank you very much. Okay, so I want to share with you something, just because we finished speaking about Abdul-Baha and now it's over. I wanted to share with you this. Wait, hold on. How am I going to do this? I know. Sorry, give me a minute. Okay, there is a book that was just recently published called The Point of Adoration. And I wanted to share it with you because it really, it completes the story of the chronology of Baha'u'llah, because you can continue on, and it's really interesting. It's the biography of the, okay, hold on. It's the biography of the Shrine of Baha'u'llah. It's very fascinating. I was just reading it. I just bought it on the American website, the American book website. And there you go, almost done. And there you go. There you go. So it's Point of Adoration. It's very interesting. It's written by Michael Day, who wrote already the biographies of the Shrine of the Bab, and it's an interesting complement to the chronology. It's called Point of Adoration: The Story of the Shrine of Baha'u'llah from 1873 to 1892. And one of the things Michael Day does in this book is he brings light on the preparation of the sacred body of Baha'u'llah. And he has vivid descriptions of how Abdul-Baha gathered the Baha'i friends for the funeral procession that are illuminated by candlelight and oil lamps. And he also includes tributes to Baha'u'llah, the tributes I mentioned, to Baha'u'llah by great writers and poets. And he also gives the background of the mansion of Bahji, what life was like there when Baha'u'llah lived there, including a little known fact that I love very much is that Baha'u'llah had his own flock of goat and sheep. So this is the table of contents. As you can see, it's quite a thorough book. There's a lot of things to learn about here, including in the words of Shoghi Effendi, this is what the reason to get this book really is the words of Shoghi Effendi on the effect of the release of the soul from the manifestation of God from his earthly body. So the effect of the release of the soul of a manifestation from its body. I mean, that's wonderful. And I had a little message here from you, from Michael. Michael sends you his love from Australia, and he hopes that you will find inspiration and enjoyment in the book, and understand how a manifestation of God for today saw the world, and see the example set by Abdul Baha in his attitude towards Baha'u'llah, towards the manifestation of God. So you can buy the book in hard copy in most Baha'i libraries and in ebook format on the Baha'i Library of the United States. So that's kind of what I'm reading now after I finished doing my this presentation, because I kind of didn't want to leave anymore. I love this being in that presence, you know? So I want to say thank you, everyone, for being here. This is our last session with the biography of Baha'u'llah. It has been 13 absolutely wonderful, wonderful days. And we had tests on our end. We had no internet in Congo, and then our poor friends in Florida had that storm that and they weathered it, is the word. Our Florida friends weathered the storm. And I want to really thank once again every single one of you for being here. You've made this such a special experience for all of us. And I want to thank Clearwater Baha'is, especially Jeremiah, so hardworking, always keeping us. Oh yeah, you're so hardworking. Without you, none of this would work. And before we stop the recording for today, I wanted to let you guys have a say, you know. This is our last day together, so instead of closing as we usually do for comments, just wanted to see if any one of you want to say anything about the life of Baha'u'llah.
You all should be able to unmute yourselves if you
Okay, great,
would like
thanks.
to.
I'll start. It was very special for me to say. I wrote the chronology, but I never read it out loud. I wrote it, and while we've been reading this out loud together, it's been kind of like a hybrid of an audiobook and an illustrated movie, because the illustrations keep going and then the narration keeps going. And so for me to read it out loud, I've bonded more with the person of Baha'u'llah through reading it out loud than I feel I did when, I mean, I did bond very closely with Baha'u'llah when I was writing this, but reading it, you know, when you do something in silence, it has no existence in the realm of being. But if you speak something, it occupies space. Sound waves are a real thing, you know? And Baha'u'llah always enjoins us to chant his words and chant the holy writings. And I never ever stopped thinking about Ruhiya Khanum, who said that Shoghi Effendi wrote out loud. You know, so the magic of audiobooks I never understood before, and now I understand that it gives life to the words, you know. And people who record audiobooks don't have the chance I have, because I'm not a professional reader, you know. I've done my best, but knowing that living souls were on the other end, seeing you there, that was the concept of communion was a big, when I think of this experience that we've had, the word that comes to my mind is communion, because I feel like we experienced something together, you know, that made us close. And that was deeply moving, actually. So Thank you very much. And I don't know if Peter has some words he wants to say to us because he's the one organizing this. No.
This is La Jamaya. I'd like to just offer a few comments, if I might. I totally agree with what you just shared with us. It was an experience knowing that all of the people, the faces or the pictures that we see on the screen are a part of this experience, gives it even more life. And I'm sure that was true for you as the reader. So I am just so grateful, and even more grateful for the opportunity to know that I can go back and listen to this again.
Exactly.
Thank you so much.
That I've been doing that all along, all the way back to the love of the Bob. Yes. And I agree with what you said about the audio, this connection that I have gained through your reading and bringing it to life and adding so much richness and drama, and the selections of your photos and your art. I mean, it just brings it to life, and it just hits you right square in the heart, in the soul. And I really want to thank you for that.
Yeah.
And to have it on YouTube, forever. It's really great.
Yeah. It's really funny that you say that, because when I'm writing the chronologies, I pray constantly, but I'm always thinking of you reading the chronologies, right? But I don't know who you are, because when you publish something on the internet, it has a life of its own. Video, or you publish a chronology, and it lives its own life. You don't know who reads it. With friends, it feels like a fireside. And because I can see all your names, I can see your pictures, I can see your names, I can see your videos. It doesn't matter if there's a video or not, I know that you're there. And so it's like such a different, it's like more immediate than when I'm writing for my audience, I always think of my audience when I'm writing, but when I'm reading, element of energy that comes to me when I'm reading it, because I know you're there. I'm not reading on a microphone to a sound audio engineer. I'm reading to real people who clicked on a link to be here today. That means they want to be here today, they're not being paid to be the engineer in the studio. So, I think that's taught me a lot about what teaching is, because teaching is not something you can do on email, you're in that room with that person. And I think it's that little effervescent, that little thing, when you know it's going right, or when you're having a really wonderful conversation with someone. And I think that's it's been really great.
I have a question.
Oh, yeah.
Will you be doing one on Shoghi Effendi?
Yes.
All right. Great.
Yeah.
Silly
Definitely.
question, huh?
Definitely. Yeah, because every time I finish a chronology, I say I'm never doing this again. And then a year goes by, and then I can do it again, because I'm over my burnout. And so, I'm going to start working on it as soon as I can. But I have to finish Abdul Baha first. I can't start the chronology, because the chronology takes about as much energy as reading this does for 12 days in a row. So I need to, and I really want to focus on Abdul Baha 100%. So I'm going to do that starting in October. I'm going to do that. And hopefully I can publish before his birthday in March. So pray for me.
All right. We will. And
of course I'll be narrating it too, because this has been such a wonderful experience. Then I'll inaugurate once the chronology is published, the first thing I'm going to do is narrate it with you guys. So
wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah.
I'd just like to take the opportunity to say thank you to the Clearwater Baha'is. I'm receiving their weekly newsletter now, and the resources that community is providing are extraordinary. And I'm so grateful for what you're sharing with not just your community, but communities worldwide.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy that you are in alliance with Desert Rose Baha'i Institute. I actually live next door to Desert Rose Baha'i Institute, and I'm just thrilled with what's happening through your collaboration.
Wow, that's so cool, Ajmaya. Didn't know that. Go ahead, Lena. You have your hand up. Go ahead.
you can express yourself in such a natural way, but I can't. But I just want to say thank you, and I agree with whatever you are saying, and you express something. Do you have anything else to say about Baha'u'llah? And then I was, well, haven't we? You have expressed everything in 12 or 13 days. What can you say something about this? Is it going to be the same way every evening? It's kind of, or are you having it once a week, or?
For what do you mean?
For Abdul Baha.
Oh, Abdul Baha has another intensive. It's every night. Yeah.
Every
Yeah.
night.
Yeah.
Okay. And when will you?
It's going to be September. It's going to be September 22nd to the 30th, but we might extend until October 1st or 2nd if I need more time.
Okay.
So it starts on September 22nd, and you receive my emails, Linda, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to be sending an email out and tell you when it's going to start with the YouTube link and with the Zoom link and everything.
Okay.
Yeah. And then this Sunday, the Clearwater Baha'is are having part 2 of Haji Mirza Haidar Ali. Yes. And next Sunday is part 3 because everybody said they wanted to spend another week with him. So I listened. All right. Well, thank you so much. And I guess we'll see each other on September 22nd. Oh, yes. Go ahead, Peter.
So I have just dropped a link to the next class, to the series on Abdul Baha.
Okay, great.
A Zoom link into the chat. I have also sent the whole text of the link to you and also to Jeremiah and John. So you will be able, everybody who's on this call can go into the chat, copy that link, and then as of September 22nd, that's what you use in order to connect.
Okay.
And so I did wait to the last minute to share it with you. And I'm actually glad I did, because we've been sharing lots of things on chat and it might have gotten lost or somebody might not have written it down. But now you know, you have to go into chat, copy that link, and then you'll have no problem logging into the class.
Okay, great. I'm going to send the email on the 4 days before it starts. Okay. So I'm not sending it too early. So yeah. But if you're
reminders are so important.
And get other links. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Peter. That was
Thank you.
That was great. Thank you for organizing this. That was really wonderful. Got to make so many new friends that I treasure, and I'm just so grateful.
Mind if I throw my two?
Thank you, Violetta.
Please, Daniel, go ahead.
Well, I find the subject material to be rather overwhelming because I'm not very familiar. Like I said, I'm very new to this. But you make it very easy to learn, and it's easy to follow. And you've been my white donkey the whole way. I appreciate it. Thank you for that.
I'll have to explain something for those of you who are watching. This is our farewell, so we've left the comments in today in this video. And what Daniel was talking about was, I went a little bit off script yesterday, which I normally never do, and I just went on this dissertation about how much I love donkeys. And actually, this turned into quite a profound conversation in the questions and comments afterwards, because it turns out Peter Terry reminded us that the white donkey is actually a prophecy from the Old Testament that Jesus Christ accomplished by entering into Jerusalem on a white donkey. And if you Google white donkey prophecy Jesus, you'll find the Wikipedia page. And so it was very interesting that also Baha'u'llah, who is the return of Jesus Christ, also had two white donkeys, and also Abdul Baha had a white donkey. So we discussed in the questions yesterday how the donkey seems like this silly animal because it has these big ears, but it's actually a very loyal and very hardworking and very steadfast animal that has an extremely strong back. And we started thinking about Jesus Christ and Baha'u'llah and Abdu'l-Baha, how they had also like such a resistance to covenant breakers and tests, and nothing could move them. They were immovable. And so it was kind of this moment of us actually appreciating the existence of this animal that enshrines one of the qualities of God. You know, you can meditate on it however you want. God tells us that every living being is a manifestation of one of his attributes. And the donkey is one of the living beings. And two manifestations of God and the center of the covenant have ridden white donkeys. So when Daniel Minton says it was his white donkey, he was teasing. We're just laughing at an inside joke, and we just shared that inside joke with you.
Make it easier for fun to learn about these things. And well, even geographically, I'm not really sure where these places are. And normally I'm pretty good at geography. It makes it very easy to visualize, and I appreciate your authenticity when speaking, and it makes it a joy to attend these sessions. So
thank you so much, Daniel. You know, you can always feel free to email me and tell me, listen, I was a little confused by that. Where is that? How many Nabils are there? You know, feel free. You can use that email for questions. So I'm very happy to follow up on what I've written. Is that it?
That's it for me.
Are we going to see each other on the September 21st, 22nd?
Oh, yes.
Yes, Lena, go ahead. Are you just waving by?
I'm coming the 22nd.
Okay.
But
Me
after
too.
that, I'm visiting my daughter, so I will have to take it on something else, on video.
Okay. Okay.
Afterwards.
That's wonderful. All right. Love you guys. See you on September 22nd.
Thank you. And this Sunday.
Oh, yes, this Sunday, if you want to come. Okay.